I never expected to find love after losing 100,000 in a suitcase. Until she knocked on my door. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. My heart raced. My hands trembled as I sifted through the wreckage of my life. The Caucasian unassuming black rectangle once held my dreams. Now it felt like an anchor pulling me down. The money wasn't just bills to me. It was hope, plans, a future I had painted in vibrant colors. And now it slipped through my fingers like ash. I had lost it in a dive bar in a blink where silence swallowed my frantic calls. It was gone. Just like that. Days turned into a blur of empty phone calls and desperate searches. I mourned what I could have done: travel, start a new life, escape this suffocating town. My friends? They were gone. Gone like my faith in humanity, erased by betrayal. And then there was Sophie. The girl with the fiery hair and eyes like emeralds. She was a friend of a friend, just someone passing through. But every smile she tossed my way lit a spark in my chest. I didn't deserve that spark. Not now, not after what I had lost. One night I heard a soft knock at my door. My heart skipped. I opened it and there she was. Breathless. Curious. "Is everything okay?" she asked. I could only stare at her, speechless, feeling the weight of my despair mingling with a strange hope blooming inside me. What did she want? A friend? A shoulder? Or was it something more? Everything felt disjointed, like pieces of a shattered puzzle. And there she stood, an unformed image of a new beginning. Suddenly my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A message from an unknown number. My stomach dropped. "I know where your suitcase is," my heartbeat thundered. All I could think was, which was more real, the girl in front of me or the words on my screen? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The glow from Sophie's eyes lingered in my mind as I stared at my phone. The message, a harsh intrusion on the fragile moment we had shared. "I know where your suitcase is." It felt like a lifeline, but steeped in mistrust and potential danger. I clutched my phone tightly, my knuckles whitening as dread crept in. Sophie took a step closer, tilting her head in concern. "Hey, are you okay?" Her voice was soft, and I could see genuine concern etched on her face. The warmth of her presence was like a balm, but I felt the ice creeping into my heart again. I fumbled with my words. How could I explain the chaos swirling within me? The promise of hope from that message threatened to pull me away from the grounding influence Sophie offered. "It's nothing," I finally muttered, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. Sophie raised an eyebrow, not fully convinced. "You don't look okay." She reached out, her fingers lightly brushing my arm, and the warmth spread through me in defiance of my anxiety. "You can tell me, whatever it is." The phone buzzed again, demanding my attention. Reluctantly, I glanced at it. "You meet me tomorrow at the gas station. I'll tell you everything." Panic surged through me. Couldn't go. Not without knowing what this stranger wanted from me. But then, who was I kidding? "I had to know that I have to go," I blurted, guilt lacing my voice. "Something urgent." I hated how easily I pushed her away when she was nothing but kind. But fear gripped me, a dark shadow over the fragile light she brought. She looked hurt for a moment, her lips parting as if to say something. But then she simply nodded, her emerald gaze dimming. "Okay, but please be careful. Whatever it is, it can wait. Don't rush into anything." Her concern pierced deeper than I anticipated, sending pangs of regret slicing through me. I wanted to reassure her that I'd be fine, that this ominous mystery wouldn't consume me, but the truth bubbled beneath the surface. I felt the weight of everything I could lose eclipsing the fragile hope she enabled in me. With a forced smile and a shaky hand, I closed the door, but the heaviness of unspoken words lingered in the air, wrapping around me like a cold fog. The next day, I stood outside the gas station, anxiety knotting my stomach. I had arrived early, replaying all the scenarios in my head. The sun beat down on me relentlessly, each passing car a moment of dreaded anticipation. Who was this person? What did they want? I felt raw like a wound still seeking closure. Moments dragged on in silence, and just when I thought about leaving, a red sports car pulled into the lot. My heart raced as a tall figure stepped out, a familiar face hidden beneath a dark cap. My breath caught Tommy, an acquaintance from my old life. The connection felt like an anchor to the chaos of my past, a reminder of the very trauma I had tried to escape. "What are you doing here?" I stammered, disoriented. "Did you come for me?" He shrugged, a lopsided grin emerging. "I'm not a lawyer, but I have some information regarding your suitcase." I swallowed hard, panic and anticipation intertwining. "What do you know?" He took a step closer, his voice lowering. "Let's go somewhere less public." Something in his tone sent shivers racing down my spine. As he led me to the back of the station, I felt a rush of apprehension. What game was he playing? My heart pounded, a rhythmic warning that echoed in my ears. I thought of Sophie, how her warmth felt genuinely, a stark contrast to the cold, desperate grip of the past. "Listen, I'll make this quick," Tommy said, his voice cracking slightly. "I might know who has your suitcase." A wave of incredulity washed over me. "What do you mean?" He glanced around like a shadowed hawk before leaning in. "It's not what you think, man. Someone from your old circle." He hesitated, chewing on the edges of his words. "Someone you trust." The weight of his declaration slammed into me, fear spiraling out of control. It was not just a loss, it was a betrayal looming like a storm above me. My pulse quickened. Would my past shatter the fragile hope Sophie had injected into my life? "Who?" I demanded. But before he could respond, the familiar sound of laughter echoed from a nearby corner. I turned sharply, and there she was, Sophie, chatting animatedly with a little girl, her laughter mingling with the sunlight. And in that moment, I felt the earth shift beneath my feet. Would she still look at me with kindness if she knew the truth of my past? My chest tightened. I was standing at the precipice of two worlds, one vibrant with the promise of love, the other dark and fraught with betrayal. Tommy's voice trailed off as my attention was drawn back to Sophie, spiraling the depths of my emotional turmoil. She caught my eye, a soft smile gracing her lips, and in that instant I knew I had to choose. Either reveal everything and risk breaking the fragile bond we were forming, or keep my secrets that threatened to drown me. But was it even my choice to make? As the laughter faded and the reality around me crystallized, the stakes grew high. A choice that could shatter everything I sought to build anew. The air hung heavy with dread as I stood caught between the past and the spark of something new. Sophie's laughter danced in my head, light and melodious, juxtaposed sharply against the ominous shadows Tommy's words cast over me. I fought the sudden urge to run to her, to escape this conversation, but I was anchored in Plasmy, heart torn in two. "Listen," Tommy pressed, urgency flooding his tone. "You need to know who it is. This could help you." He leaned closer, lowering his voice even more. "It's about your suitcase. This person, they want something from you." I could hardly bear what he was saying, but I needed answers. The thought of betrayal cut deeper than anything. My voice trembled as I asked, "Who?" He inhaled deeply, his eyes darting between me and Sophie, who was still blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beyond her line of sight. "It's someone you used to trust. Someone close." "Just say it," I snapped, the rage bubbling up from the pit of my stomach. I could feel the urge to protect Sophie, who walked into my life like a ray of hope, threatening to eclipse this darkness. "I can't deal with riddles right now." He hesitated again, and in that moment I hated him. I hated him for dragging me back to this nightmare, for reminding me of all that I had lost. But just as I was about to push him away, he uttered her name and my breath caught. "It's Alicia." The name struck me like a physical blow, memories flashing through my mind, each one a reminder of the life I had fought so hard to leave behind. Alicia had been a close friend, one of the few people I thought I could trust. The thought of her in any way tied to this mess made my stomach churn. "What do you mean?" I whispered, disbelief threading through my veins. "What does she want?" "She knows about the suitcase," Tommy said, his expression grim. "And she's not the only one. You need to be careful about who you're letting back into your life." Rage ignited inside me, a scorching fire fueled by betrayal. "You don't know anything." I spat at Tommy, but his expression remained rooted in painful familiarity that I'd seen too many times before, fear masked as bravado. "Listen," he said softly, his resolve faltering for a moment. am not here to hurt you. I was worried and worried? I interrupted, almost incredulously. You think you can toss Alicia's name at me and call it worry? My entire life is a mess because of people like her. But in the back of my mind, a horrifying thought began to take shape. What if Alicia had orchestrated the whole thing? What if she was in cahoots with the very person who had my suitcase? The weight of frustration bore down on me like lead, and I realized I needed to act. But before I could formulate a plan, I caught Sophie glancing our way, her bright eyes searching for me. The sheer warmth of her gaze melted the walls I had built around myself, igniting a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. I wanted to run to her, to strip away the darkness that choked our connection, but the world I was tied to had its cruel claws on me. I had to choose. Your past is trying to creep back in. You need to keep your distance from her, Tommy insisted, his voice somehow more insistent now. She's not who she seems. She'll drag you back down. But just as I began to consider his words with desperation, Sophie took a step forward, her posture sweet but protective. Is everything okay? She called out, concern lacing her tone, bringing warmth in stark contrast to the cold knot of uncertainty twisting in my stomach. As a reflex, I straightened, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Yeah, just catching up with an old friend. Sophie's gaze flickered between Tommy and me, suspicion sharp in her emerald eyes. Doesn't look like catching up to me. You sure you're all right? My heart pounded as I wrestled with the truth. I could feel Tommy's presence only reinforcing what I was terrified to admit. I was on the brink of losing everything. I could feel it pressing in on meth weight of my past, the fear of deception, and the chance of losing her if she discovered the whirlpool of secrets I fought to keep buried. Need to talk to you, I finally admitted, looking at Sophie, my resolve wavering under the soft intensity of her gaze. Can you give me a minute? For a heartbeat she hesitated, searching for clarity in my pained expression. Of course, she replied softly, folding her arms across her chest in that gesture of gentle reassurance that I had come to cherish. But the spark of worry in her eyes warned me that I was teetering on the edge of losing this moment. As she stepped back, giving us space, I turned back to Tommy, irritation mingled with desperation. This better be worth it. If what you're saying is true, then I need to find Alicia now. Don't, he insisted, his voice cautious, but I could hear the concern threaded throughout. You don't know what you're getting into. With a steely stare I shot back, I won't let my past dictate my future. Not again. I had choices to make, and time was running out. Yet just as I felt a hidden strength surge within meth kind I needed to stand against my past, I noticed a shadow creeping over Sophie's face through the gas station glass. She was no longer smiling. The light in her eyes flickered, replaced with a frown as she glanced over her shoulder, her gaze fixed on something behind me. Is everything okay? She asked again, but this time her voice trembled, and when I turned to see what had captured her attention, my breath caught in my throat. A figure stepped out of a car. A face I never thought I would see again, Alicia, smiling with deceptive warmth, bearing the threat of a truth I had hoped to escape. All the air escaped me, the walls around me closing in with a sickening finality. I was running out of time, and the hope I had grasped wasn't just slipping away. It was about to shatter under the weight of the very choices I had yet to make. My heart stopped as Alicia moved toward us, her confident stride cutting through the dim light of the gas station parking lot like a knife. I felt every muscle in my body tense, the familiar swirl of anxiety threatening to pull me under. Sophie's voice faded into a distant hum, my mind consumed by the revelation that unfolded before me. Alicia had come back. My once cherished friend, now a ghost from a past that I couldn't afford to revisit, seemed unfazed by the whirlwind of emotions crashing through me. She waved as if picking up our conversation exactly where we had left off, her smile too bright, too calculated. Long time no see, she chirped, her eyes flicking between me and Sophie with an unmistakable hint of challenge. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd check in. A shudder ran through me. The very air became stifling, and I struck a desperate look at Sophie, hoping to convey my alarm without words. Her expression, however, told me everything I needed to know. She felt the tension and was watching me, studying my reaction with anxious curiosity. Her brow furrowed. Sophie, I started to say, but Alicia interjected smoothly, her voice dripping with feigned innocence that, oh, you must be the new friend. I've heard so much about you. She extended her hand, the gesture seemingly genuine. Alicia, Sophie remained still, measuring the situation with those piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through the layers of deception. Ignoring her hand, I stepped closer, the urge to shield her mounting within me. "What do you want, Alicia?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the tremor in my heart. "Why are you here?" "What a cold welcome," she said, feigning hurt, though her demeanor was more predatory than disarmed. "Can't a girl check in on an old friend? Especially after all the trouble you've been through?" Her words dripped with sarcasm, and my stomach twisted as realization hit me like a freight train. She wasn't here to help. She had come to play mind games. It was a game I refused to participate in. Not when Sophie stood mere feet away, watching this unfold. "I am done with your tricks, Alicia. You don't get to worm your way back in," I shot back, my own voice now growing sharp as shards of betrayal mixed with fear. "Stay away from me and Sophie." Sophie shifted beside me, her presence grounding but filled with uncertainty. "Maybe we should just talk later?" she suggested, but it was clear she felt the shift in the atmosphere as well. "Oh, but this is so much fun," Alicia cooed, her tone silky too sweet. "It's not every day you see old friends reconnecting, right? Especially right after an unfortunate situation with a suitcase." The last word echoed between us, her eyes glinting with treachery. Sophie's brow furrowed deeper, and I could see the cogs turning in her mind. Each word that fell from Alicia's lips felt laced with poisonous intent, and the walls were closing in again, threatening to suffocate whatever hopeful prospects I had built with Sophie. "Just tell me what you want," I said through clenched teeth, trying to ignore the gnawing fear that gnawed at my insides. Her smile softened, but her gestures turned ominous, the air thick with tension. "I just want to help, of course. You see, I have information. There are people who are looking for that suitcase, and you wouldn't want to jeopardize your future over something that could end up being a lot more complicated than you think." At that moment, Tommy folded his arms, standing on the periphery of the confrontation. I could feel his presence, uncertain, resolute, and haunted by the consequences of his past mistakes. But the flickering shadows of doubt loomed large over his involvement. It was as if he had come here to warn me yet had dropped another bomb instead. "What are you talking about?" I pressed, the warmth from Sophie's hand barely registering amidst my growing dread. "Oh, it's a complicated web, sweetie," Alicia said, leaning against a nearby car, her body language exuding comfort while her eyes sparked with malice. "There are others who think they're entitled to it too, and trust me, those others don't mess around. They might not be as forgiving as I am." Panic clawed at my throat. My heart raced, pounding like a war drum. What did she mean by others? That my presence in this mess was putting not just me but Sophie in danger? In that instant, I felt a surge of protectiveness that slammed into my chest, followed by a wave of betrayal, anger, and dread swirling into a tempest. I needed to act quickly before the weight of the situation crushed me entirely. Before Alicia used Sophie as a pawn in her sinister game, I locked eyes with Alicia, summoning all the courage I could muster, resisting the frantic pulse of anxiety that coursed through me. "You want to intimidate me? I'll do whatever it takes to keep Sophie safe. Just stay away from us." Sophie's grip on my arm tightened, her eyes wary as she searched my face, sensing the tempest unfolding. "I don't understand," she whispered, confusion and concern merging in those beautiful emerald depths. But before I could explain or say anything to alleviate her fears, Alicia let out a low, almost musical laugh that echoed through the void, chilling my bones. "You don't even know what you're up against. But once you do, it might be too late." With that, Alicia waved a casual goodbye over her shoulder, her retreating figure a dark promise hanging in the air. And just then, the smile fell from Sophie's face, replaced by a growing dread that mirrored my own. My heart sank deeper, the looming darkness brushing away the hope I had begun to cultivate. I had a suffocating sense that I was being watched from every direction, my past reaching out to grab hold of my future. As I looked back at Sophie, I knew I had to tell her everything, to protect her from the growing shadows that threatened us both. But before I could speak, her phone buzzed, a sound that seemed to echo ominously through the stillness. With shaking hands, Sophie checked her notification, her face paling in an instant. "Oh my God," she breathed, eyes wide. "It's a message from someone named Alicia." My heart dropped. The game was just beginning, and I could feel the walls of my world starting to crumble. How could things slip through my fingers so fast? I had choices, but the weight of that decision hung heavier than ever, with consequences I couldn't yet fathom. A rush of icy dread filled the space between us as Sophie stared at her phone, her face suddenly pale and strained. I stepped closer, leaning over her shoulder in a desperate attempt to see the message that threatened to change everything. "What does it say?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, heart racing in tune with the urgency of the moment. Sophie's fingers trembled as she read the words aloud, her tone trembling. "Says, I know where the suitcase is. Meet me at the old warehouse on Elm Street midnight. Come alone. Or else." The gravity of her words crashed over me like a tidal wave. I felt my pulse quicken, a mix of panic and hopelessness swirling within. The stakes had transformed in an instant, morphing into something darker and more ominous. I locked eyes with Sophie, a storm of emotions raging just beneath the surface. "I can't believe this," I murmured. I searched her face for answers, for comfort, but all I found were flickers of fear. "What do we do?" Sophie's eyes darted back to the screen, then to me. "We can't just ignore it. They know we have the suitcase and they're not going to let it go. But meeting them alone?" I shook my head vehemently, the protective instincts surging fiercely once more. "That's insane. I can't let you go anywhere near this. It's too dangerous. I won't let you face this alone," Sophie insisted, defiance creeping into her gaze despite the clenching fear. "We're in this together, remember? Whatever happens, we figure it out as a team." Her determination kindled a small flame within me, but the reality of our situation loomed large. I glanced down at her hand, still gripping my arm as if anchoring herself. The warmth radiating from her skin melted some of the ice encasing my heart, urging me to listen to her. "We can't go to the police," I said, softening as I searched for a solution. "Who knows what kind of trouble that might bring? We need a plan." Suddenly, the night air was pierced by sirens screaming in the distance. Adrenaline surged, heightening my senses. I pulled Sophie closer to me, shielding her as I scanned our surroundings, instincts honed from years of evasion kicking in. "Let's get out of here," I urged, urgency spiking in my veins. "We can talk this out somewhere safe, somewhere where they can't find you." As we hurried toward my car, Sophie's phone buzzed again, the sound ricocheting off the pavement like a gunshot. My heart skipped as we both froze, watching her screen illuminate. "Another message," she said, her voice quavering as she braced herself. "It's from Tommy." Tommy. My mind raced at the thought of him caught up in all of this. Another thread in the tangled web weaving around us. "What does he want?" Sophie opened the message, her brow furrowing as she read it quietly. "He says he has something important to tell us, and that we should meet him at the diner across town." My gut twisted. Why would he want to meet us now? I wondered aloud. Tommy was entangled. His involvement felt more like a risk than a help. But then again, we might need every ally we could get if this spiraled further out of control. Sophie turned to me, her eyes pleading. "We can't just ignore him. What if he knows something that can help?" The sirens were growing closer, echoing ominously, and my camera-clicking thoughts were frantic. I needed answers, but I felt like we were surrounded by shadows closing in from every angle. "Okay," I acquiesced, the weight in my chest deepening. "Let's go to the diner. But we keep our guard up. I don't want to put you in any more danger." As we sprinted toward my car, I felt a glimmer of hope, even while the darkness loomed. Somehow, amidst the chaos, I needed to believe that unraveling this mess was the key, if only to protect us both from the lurking shadows. Once inside the car, with the engine growling to life, Sophie turned to me, her expression wavering. "You really think we can do this?" I swallowed hard, fighting against the creeping doubt. "I have to believe we can." As we drove through the night, my mind spun with possibilities. I glanced over at Sophie, her beautiful face illuminated by the streetlights, both terrified and brave. It lit a fire within me, a determination to face whatever elicited from the past, together, one step at a time. But amidst my resolve, an unsettling thought lingered, whispering that this was just the beginning of something darker. And before I knew it, a wave of horror washed over me as an unexpected figure came into view down the road, a Hida silhouette leaning against the diner's entrance, the unmistakable outline of Tommy, his expression obscured in the shadows. That in that instant, a sudden realization struck me hard, akin to a punch to the gut. He was here, yet the tension crackling in the air suggested that danger had just escalated. Sudden lights flickered on around the diner, illuminating not just the desperate situation, but the unnerving presence of figures cloaked in darkness nearby. "Wait," I said, fear pinching my heart as something shifted in the air. "This isn't right." Before I could react, shrouded figures emerged from the very shadows we had thought we were escaping. The danger felt palpable, and just as I shifted into drive, a knife edge of realization crept in, a deep, unsettling truth. As the truth unfolded like an ominous script, one question haunted me. Had Tommy brought us here as allies or as bait? The atmosphere inside the diner was thick with tension, an oppressive veil that seemed to whisper secrets I wasn't ready to hear. As I reached for the door handle, my pulse raced, the weight of uncertainty squeezing my chest. I exchanged a worried glance with Sophie, who appeared just as apprehensive, her fingers intertwined with mine, providing an unspoken promise of strength. Pushing the door open, the faint chime of the bell sounded a warning, startling the few patrons inside. Tommy sat alone in a corner booth, his eyes darting nervously as they landed on us. He motioned for us to join him, but something in his demeanor felt off, a palpable disconnect between the urgency of his summons and the darkness curling around him like smoke. "We shouldn't trust him," I murmured to Sophie as we approached. But her expression reflected a yearning for answers, a need that mirrored my own. Once seated, I shot Tommy a hard glare. He wore the heavy burden of secrets etched into his features, his eyes darting around the diner as though he feared someone was watching. "What's going on, Tommy?" I urged, trying to keep my voice low amidst the dull hum of the diner's fluorescent lights. "Why did you want to meet?" His hand trembled slightly as he reached into his jacket pocket, retrieving an envelope with trembling fingers. "I got this just before you arrived," he stammered, placing the envelope on the table as if it were a ticking time bomb. "You both need to see it." With shaking hands, I reached for the envelope, the paper yellowed and worn, as if it had traveled through countless hands and terrible intentions. My heart thumped audibly in my chest as I opened it, unfolding the contents with greater care than I'd ever shown anything before. Inside was a series of photographs, grainy images that stirred a mixture of dread and confusion in my gut. Each snapshot held a glimpse of something I had hoped never to confront: a messy convergence of our past, and the ongoing chaos surrounding the suitcase. There were images of us in moments that felt like glimpses of betrayal, captured by eyes we couldn't see. "What the hell is this?" Sophie's voice pierced through the silence, thick with growing alarm. Her eyes flitted over the photos, scanning them as though searching for confirmation of the nightmare unfolding. "Who took these?" I murmured, my mind racing to piece together the implications. "What do they want?" Tommy's face paled, fear scuttling across his features. "I didn't know, not until now. But it gets worse." He paused, swallowing hard as if the weight of his words might suffocate him. "They're tracking you. I received threats too, and they know you're in danger." My heart dropped and an icy dread seeped into my bones. Why would they care about us? Because of what's in the suitcase. Someone wants it back and they will do anything to get it, including using you to lure me out. A cold sweat trickled down my back as the realization sank deeper. Was Tommy a pawn in this game, or had he willingly placed us in the crosshairs? Sophie's grip tightened on my wrist, her panic radiant against the backdrop of our anxiety. "Tommy, if you knew what was at stake, why didn't you come to us sooner?" Her voice quivered, fighting to maintain control. "We could have figured this out together." "Because I thought I could handle it," he replied, his honesty paired with an undercurrent of desperation. "I didn't want to pull you both further in." And now his gaze wandered anxiously. "Now it might already be too late." The words hung in the air like an unfurling storm, the weight of dread pressing down on us. I felt Sophie's fingers on my wrist, a lifeline tethering me to a reality that felt perilous, but amid the darkness, I saw a flicker of determination in her eyes, and that ember of hope nestled deep within me began to ignite again. "We need to figure this out," I said, my voice steady. "If we stick together, we can take back control." Tommy nodded, seeming relieved at my sentiment, but then his expression shifted, eyes widening in alarm as he tilted his head towards the diner entrance. The cacophony of the diner slowly faded and the air grew charged, thick with peril. "What's happening?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach as I turned to see what had caught Tommy's gaze. A figure stepped into the diner, silhouetted against the outer light. My heart sank as I recognized the ominous presence. A man in a dark leather jacket, a thin smile stretching across his face, something wicked in his eyes. He scanned the room, his gaze lingering on our booth far too long, before moving further inside. Why is he here? Sophie's whisper was tremulous, terror etched on her features. Who is he? I demanded, urgency swelling within me as the realization surged that we were well and truly trapped. That's one of them, Tommy whispered back, tone laced with resignation. The people after the suitcase. The sense of dread morphed into panic, as the room felt smaller, claustrophobic with an impending doom. We have to go, I urged, tugging at Sophie's hand to rise. Now, but just before we could react, the man's icy eyes locked onto ours. He approached, confident, each step echoing a sense of foreboding. A chilling smile spread across his face as he leaned against our booth. Well, look who I found. I believe you have something that belongs to me. My mind raced, thoughts colliding with fears of losing Sophie, losing everything. And as the man's presence loomed closer, I knew without a doubt, whatever fragile hope we had worked to build was in jeopardy. The choice still lay ahead: fight or flee. The slightest hesitation could cost us dearly, and I braced myself for the decision that might change everything once again. We were in deeper than I ever expected, and the past was crashing back in, just as I feared it would. The weight of our predicament crushed down like a heavy shroud, the lights of the diner flickering ominously as the man leaned closer, his presence overwhelming. I believe you have something that belongs to me, he repeated, a taunting lilt in his voice that sent a shiver racing down my spine. Sophie's grip remained firm on my wrist, but I could feel the tremor of her body, a silent indication of how close to the edge we were teetering. I stole a glance at Tommy, whose expression had transformed into a mask of apprehension. Listen, we don't want any trouble, I said, forcing calm into my voice, hoping somehow it would shield us from the storm brewing before us. We're just here, Toto. What? Enjoy a nice cup of coffee? The man interrupted with a cruel laugh, the mocking ring of it grating against the fragile tensions surrounding us. You're in way over your heads. Hand over the suitcase, and this can all end peacefully. Sophie's eyes darted toward Tommy, searching for guidance, as uncertainty weighed heavily in the air. The suitcase site was the anchor in our tumultuous reality, a burden transforming into a target, and here it was once again at the center of a storm we hadn't asked to join. What if we don't have it? Tommy attempted, his voice shaky but defiant, and I admired the bravery behind his fear. What if we've destroyed it? The man's expression shifted, his smile lingering like a shadow. Then I guess we'll have to find it the hard way. He straightened, peering at Sophie and me as if assessing our next move. His eyes glinting with predatory malice. Panic surged through me, surging beneath my skin like fire. We needed a plan to retreat and regroup. Let's go, I whispered urgently to Sophie, inching back from the booth. Now. But before we could slip past the man, he blocked our escape, his demeanor shifting into something dangerously calculating. I wouldn't recommend running, he said, voice low and sinister. You're better off talking. Just then, as if summoned by our desperation, an older waitress approached. Her gray hair was pulled tightly back, and the edges of her crisp uniform held traces of stories long etched in her life. She noticed the tension, her intuition sharp enough to see trouble even amidst worn faces and chipped coffee mugs. Everything okay? She asked, her tone skeptical but edged with concern. The man's smile flattened. Get lost, lady. This doesn't concern you. Without flinching, she stood her ground. This does concern me. It looks like my customers are in distress, so I suggest you back off or I'll be calling the police. For a fleeting moment, the conflict shifted. Her bravery momentarily disarmed the threat looming over us. The man faltered, caught off guard by her unexpected fierceness. Tommy seized the moment, nodding at us, his eyes signaling us to move. Let's go, I urged again, pulling Sophie to her feet as we slipped past the man. The waitress' voice followed us, unwavering. You should leave them alone. You don't know who you're messing with. Once outside, the cold air hit us like a slap in the face, grounding me with a sense of clarity amidst the chaos. We hurried down the street, fear propelling us forward under the yellow city lights. What was that? Sophie panted, the adrenaline still coursing through us as we turned the corner, seeking refuge in the relative safety of a nearby alley. I don't know, I admitted, breathless, but we need to figure out a way to get that suitcase back from him. Tommy, leaning against the wall, looked pale but resolute. It will only escalate from here. We need to find out who is behind this, and fast. There are more layers to this, things I haven't told you. His gaze fell to the ground, the weight of unspoken truths grounding us in our shared performance of strength. What else? I pressed, heart hammering, as uncertainty enveloped us once again. The idea of hidden truths felt like an echo of betrayal, washing over me with a wave of dread. I have someone I can contact. Someone who knows more about the suitcase, he replied, his voice just above a whisper, vulnerable yet resolute. But it could put us all at risk. Are you both willing to go there? I looked at Sophie, her features set in grim determination. In her eyes an unspoken bond of trust had formed, one where our alliances were forged anew amid uncertainty. Whatever we need to do, she affirmed, her voice steady. Just then, an unexpected noise echoed in the distance, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching rapidly. Fear coiled tightly in my chest as we exchanged frantic looks, recognizing the urgency of finding not just answers, but safety as well. We were merely shadows in a dangerous game, and the stakes were higher than we had anticipated. Tommy tensed, peering out into the dimly lit street. They're coming, he said, urgency piercing through his tone. We need to move now. As the footsteps drew near, the pressure mounted, and I felt time slipping through my fingers. We took off deeper into the darkness, our hearts in sync with each frantic step. Every corner we turned felt like an unraveling thread. With each heartbeat, the threads of our hopes and fears entwined tighter, dragging us further into a web of uncertainty. The fear was tangible, but amid it all, the flicker of determination lingered bright within me. Whatever lay ahead, a fight, a flight, I was certain of one thing. I would not lose Sophie again. But as we disappeared into the shadows, a lone figure standing still on the street corner caught my eye. It was him, the man in the leather jacket. And in that moment of collision with the past, a new revelation flickered. I had seen that face before. The pounding of my heart echoed in my ears as I sprinted deeper into the labyrinth of the alleyways, the cold air slicing through the remnants of fear that clung to me like a second skin. The man's face burned in my mind, a haunting specter that stirred a deep-rooted anxiety, one that told me I was on the brink of a revelation that might shatter everything I thought I knew. Sophie was just a step behind, her hurried breaths matching the cadence of urgency that thrummed in the air. I could feel the gravity of Tommy's presence, his silence amplifying the tension as we wove through the streets like fugitives in a movie I wanted to escape. The city around us had transformed into an unwelcoming beast, every flickering streetlight casting ominous shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. I led the way, questioning my decision to trust Tommy. We didn't have time for doubt, yet a voice whispered uncertainty. It was pulling us deeper, more tangled in the mess than ever before. Where are we going? Sophie asked, her tone a mix of anxiety and determination, a palpable energy crackling in the spaces between us. To my sister's place, Tommy replied, his voice steady despite the circumstance. She can help us, she has connections. If anyone knows how to deal with, well, him, it's her. That I hesitated for a split second, a flicker of concern racing through my mind. What if she's tied to this somehow? The words slipped out before I could grasp their weight. Desperation had distorted my judgment. Tommy shot me a look, an ocean of unspoken history reflected in his eyes. We need to trust each other now. If there was any chance she was involved, I wouldn't be taking you there. It's not like I have many options left. The gravel underfoot crunched as we turned another corner, leading us toward a lifeline I didn't fully grasp. The neon glow of a small shop flickered nearby, casting bursts of artificial light that represented both the heart of the city and its relentless underbelly. Images of betrayal and hope intertwined as I thought of how fragile our bonds had become as we approached the modest apartment building. Unease settled heavily in my gut. Maybe it was paranoia, but the shadows felt thicker here, as if they were alive, distorted beings moving in sync with our racing hearts. Somehow everything was connected: the suitcase, the man, and now this meeting. Sophie lingered at the entrance, her eyes scanning the street as if expecting trouble to sprout from the cracks in the pavement. Should we call someone? The police? No, I said firmly, shaking my head. We can't involve them. Not yet. They won't understand the whole story. Tommy knocked on the door, a rhythmic sound that seemed to reverberate through the stillness. Time slowed in that instant. Would she be able to help us? Would she be angry at Tommy for thrusting us into this mess? Or worse, what if she was tied to the very danger we feared? The door creaked open, revealing a small woman with dark, curly hair and an expression that teetered between confusion and recognition. "Tommy." "What?" "Serena, I need your help," he interrupted, stepping into her space, urgency curling around his words like frayed edges of a long-buried panic. She blinked, taking in my presence, and then Sophie's. Recognition flickered in her eyes, darting to my face, then back to Tommy. "What happened?" "You look, there's no time, we're being followed," I cut in, the weight of the truth spilling out like a warning. "We need to talk, but we can't be here long." Sophie stepped forward, her eyes wide. "We need to know what's going on with the suitcase. It's important. Someone wants it back and they're not playing nice." A tense silence hung in the air, thick with unasked questions. Serena's expression hardened as realization set in. "Your life is in extreme danger, all of you. But first, we need to get inside." And before she could finish, I caught sight of movement in the gloom outside, two shadows lingering too close to our hiding spot, their intentions unreadable. "It was them." "Now," I urged, grasping the door and pulling it open wide for Sophie and Tommy to rush inside. The door barely closed behind us when the sound of heavy footsteps echoed like a funeral dirge in the stairwell. My heart raced anew, the tight bond of fear and camaraderie pulsing through the air as shadows danced across the walls. "Downstairs quickly," Serena instructed, her authority cutting through the panic as she guided us toward a staircase leading to the basement. We descended into the dimly lit space, a flickering bulb casting an eerie glow across old crates and boxes stacked like forgotten dreams. The musty air hung thick with tension, but our sense of urgency silenced the dread. "Serena, what do you know about the suitcase?" Tommy asked, his voice low. She hesitated, the silence echoing in the vast emptiness, before finally exhaling, a breath filled with unshared stories. "Everything. But the truth is dangerous, and I'm not sure you're ready for what it entails." Just then a loud thud resonated from above, a chilling reminder of how fragile our sanctuary was. "We don't have time for games or secrets," I snapped, urgency clawing at me as reality bore down, sharper than ever. Suddenly, a small crack of light pierced through a nearby door, illuminating a path just as a familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway above us. Tommy's face paled, his eyes widening in disbelief. No, not him. As the figure descended slowly into our hideaway, I realized with heart-stopping clarity who it was. The man in the leather jacket, but now wearing a smirk that suggested he was more than just an enemy. He was someone who had been waiting for this moment. "Looks like I've caught up with all of you," he said casually, eyes sparkling with malevolent delight as the room thickened with tension. The words hung in the air, thickening the atmosphere like smoke as the man stepped further into the basement, an undeniable presence that forced my heart into a frantic staccato. I couldn't contain the surge of emotions that follow it, a mix of dread, anger, and a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could still outwit him. My instincts screamed danger, but there I was, frozen in place by the reality of our predicament. "Ah, how quaint," he drawled, casually leaning against a stack of boxes, the shadows of the basement swallowing him whole while the flickering bulb illuminated the edges of his sinister smile. "So Serena, are you still playing the guardian angel? Or are you finally ready to join the winning side?" "Stay away from us," Sophie said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in her hands. It was a posture of defiance I hadn't expected. "Cute," he replied, a glint of amusement dancing in his eyes. "But you all know how this story ends. Just hand over the suitcase and I promise I can make this easy for you." Tommy stepped protectively in front of us, the tension palpable as he clenched his fists. "We won't let you have it. Whatever you're planning is destructive, and we won't be part of it." A flicker of doubt crossed my mind, but I couldn't afford to let it take root. Was Tommy truly the ally I thought he was? Or were we just stepping into a trap he had laid for us? The man chuckled darkly. "Oh Tommy, you misunderstand. It's not your choice. The suitcase isn't just a piece of luggage, it's a key to a door you didn't even know existed. And once I open it, you'll wish you had joined me sooner." Enough with the cryptic nonsense. I burst out, anger blazing through my veins. "What's in it? What does it matter to you? We're not afraid of you." His smile widened, and for a moment, I wished I hadn't provoked him. But you should be. You see, there's someone who cares quite a bit about that suitcase. Someone far more dangerous than me." A chill ran down my spine as his words sunk in. "Who?" He leaned closer, his gaze piercing into mine, filled with a dark promise. "I could tell you, but that would spoil the surprise." What's life without a little uncertainty, right? Serena stepped forward, her stance rooted in determination, as if ready to confront demons from her own past. You're playing a dangerous game, and I won't let you harm them. He rolled his eyes, feigning boredom. Please, dear Serena, you're an excellent chess piece, but you've always been too emotional for this kind of game. The tension coiled tighter as we exchanged glances, fear mingling with resolve. The door to the basement was our only escape, but that meant turning our backs on him and revealing weakness. Let's all just take a breath here, Tommy said, attempting to de-escalate the situation. Go back upstairs and we can discuss this like civilized people. Well, even throw in tea and biscuits. Or not, the man replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You think your jokes will save you? I believe we're out of time for pleasantries with that. He lunged forward, a sudden burst of motion that sent us reeling. It was instinct that drove me to grab Sophie's hand as I yanked her toward the door, our shared fear propelling us forward through the dimly lit space. In the chaos, I caught sight of Serena, who was intercepting him, blocking his path with a fury born from years of betrayal. Go. She yelled, her voice fierce as she struck against him, but we couldn't leave her to fight alone. Serena! Tommy shouted, torn between his sister and the escape we so desperately needed. But I could feel the pull of desperation against the backdrop of a shocking realization. Serena knew something deeper. She was part of a larger narrative that would soon come to light. It was the suitcase we feared. It was something vital, yes, but it also connected us in ways I couldn't fully understand just yet. Now, I urged Sophie, dragging her toward the door. As we reached the exit, a deafening crash echoed behind us, the basement filled with the sound of struggle, the power brigade of emotions and conflict raging within those four walls. Just as I pulled Sophie into the open, a desperate sound erupted behind us. A shriek from Serena pierced through the night, a sound that clutched my heart and sent shivers racing through my spine. The embodiment of fear gripped me, but we had crossed the threshold into the night. The door sealed shut behind us as the shadows consumed the basement. Our escape was an immediate relief, but a flicker of guilt lingered. Would we ever see Serena again? The weight of uncertainty settled heavily on my chest, and just as I turned to reassure Sophie that we were safe, I caught sight of a shadow darker than the night. The man had followed us out. With a spark of adrenaline and sheer desperation coursing through my veins, I realized the nightmare was far from over. The suitcase wasn't just a curse. It was a magnet, drawing danger toward us with an impossible force we couldn't comprehend. Sophie's grip tightened around my arm. What do we do now? Her question echoed through the chaos as uncertainty loomed. I had no answers, just the unwillingness to back down. But deep within that fear, the tiniest glimmer of hope sparked, one that whispered that love, after all, might be found in the depths of despair. What awaited us now, however, would test that hope like never before. I ran. The darkness swallowed us whole as we sprinted through the abandoned streets, Sophie's grip anchoring me, a fierce determination blazing in her emerald eyes. The urgent pounding of our footsteps echoed in my ears, drowning out the taunts of the figure we had just escaped. He was right behind us, his voice a chilling reminder that we were still very much trapped in this game. As we rounded a corner, I could feel the weight of our choices pressing down on us, the secret of the suitcase still hanging unspoken in the air between us. I needed to understand its significance, the real reason it had been pursued with such reckless abandon. But most of all, I needed to keep Sophie safe, or at least try. Where do we go? She gasped as we ducked into a narrow alley that felt as if it might close in around us. Her eyes darted, searching for escape routes, and I realized that in her gaze lay a brave, unwavering trust. The fear was palpable, yet so was the strength she radiated. Let's hide out for a moment, I suggested breathlessly, pulling her behind a stack of old crates. We crouched down, the darkness wrapping around us like a cloak, a fleeting sanctuary that offered little comfort. My heart hammered furiously in my chest, thoughts racing. Could we figure out how to overturn this nightmare together? Did you mean what you said earlier? Sophie whispered, her voice shaky but resolute. When you said we were in this together. My throat tightened, and the weight of my uncertainty pressed like a vice. Every word, I replied, the promise melting the fear from my limbs slightly. I just don't know how to move forward when danger is breathing down our necks. Sophie nodded, her expression shifting into one of fierce determination. We can't let fear control us. We need to take back control over our story, find out what this suitcase really means. Her conviction sparked something in me, an ember of hope nestled deep within the chaos we faced. Before I could respond, a sound echoed through the alleyway. Footsteps. They were close, no longer a murmur in the distance but a heavy, deliberate march. Panic surged within me, and my instincts screamed at me to flee. But I couldn't leave Sophie. I need to know what's in that suitcase, I murmured, unable to shake the pressing weight of unfinished business. And something unfurled inside me, an urgency that overruled the panic and guilt gripping my throat. What past ghosts had pursued us? What secrets would emerge if we faced this together? As the footsteps grew louder, the shadow of a figure loomed before us, blocking our only exit. The man in the leather jacket. My breath hitched as our eyes met, a malevolent grin spreading across his face. You really thought you could escape? He sneered, stepping closer to engulf us with a suffocating air of intimidation. We were cornered. If you want the suitcase, you can have it, I shouted, the frustration boiling over in my chest. But leave her out of it. His laughter peppered the darkness, cruel and taunting. Oh, it's not just the suitcase I want, my friend. I want what's inside it. In that moment, everything I had feared collided into a piercing truth. You want the money, not just that, he interrupted smoothly, his expression twisting with satisfaction. That suitcase contains more than you realize. It's a key to something much larger, something that could change everything. Sophie's eyes widened. What do you mean? Let's just say there are others out there who won't stop until they get what's rightfully theirs. And you're standing in their way. The walls of my world crashed down. I felt the light slipping, drowning in the sudden rising tide of dread. Everything I had faced, the loss, the betrayal, the awful pull of my past, felt as if it was coming to a head. Yet beneath that numbing despair, a flicker remained, a desire to protect Sophie above all else. Listen, you don't have to do this, I said, the words trembling with resolve. Let's work together. There's still a way to settle this without anyone getting hurt. He paused for a heartbeat, weighing his options. Oh, I'm sure you think that's clever. But the truth is, he said coldly, you don't know what kind of trouble you're involved in. A heavy silence draped over the alleyway, filled with unspoken accusations and buried threats. I met Sophie's gaze, and I could see that fire flickering still, ready to blaze into a full-blown inferno. And in that moment of heated realization, everything shifted. No, I replied, my voice steadying as strength welcomed its rightful place. We can find a way. Those who seek after us will pay dearly for their actions. So if I have to take on the entire world to protect her, then so be it. He stepped back, surprise flickering across his expression, a glimpse of uncertainty that emboldened my spirit. The flames of determination rose brighter, and I could almost feel them dancing between Sophie and me. But just as I prepared to lean into that resolve, my phone buzzed, a sudden, jarring noise in the quiet of the night. I fumbled for it, glancing at the screen. A message from an unknown number read, "Trust no one. The suitcase is a trap. Meet your past at the roof of the old warehouse." What does that mean? Sophie asked, concern flooding her features. I hesitated. Realizing the weight of that message felt more dire than anything that had happened so far. But then a deeper pull within my heart whispered that perhaps this was the chance we needed to face all the ghosts bare-eyed. What if we confront them together, Sophie? I urged, sensing her hesitation. Let's face whoever is after that suitcase. We can do this. We'll have each other's backs. She steadied her gaze, and the realization of shared burdens washed over us. You're right. We need to abide the truth even if it's painful. The man in the leather jacket shook his head with a bemused expression, the fleeting moment of our alliance evident behind his ridicule. You're both foolish if you think this will end well. But it wouldn't end without us trying. We had come too far, built something stronger through all the chaos. And now it felt like a bond forged through flames. Let's go, I said to Sophie, gritting my teeth as adrenaline coursed through me. I pulled her away from the crates, ready to charge back into the game. The night awaited us with uncertainty, but somewhere amidst the shadows loomed the potential for closure. As we pushed forward, I caught one last glimpse of the man, frustration etched on his features, as if he recognized that the battle was just beginning, a fight not just for the suitcase but for our lives. We stepped into the night, hearts pounding but resolved to reclaim our story. The weight we carried felt lighter, the shadows less suffocating, and with every step, I realized the darkness could never diminish the brightness we had ignited together. As we made our way toward the warehouse, I turned to Sophie, who stood resolutely by my side, and I whispered, "Whatever happens next, I'll protect you. You're not alone in this." Her smile shone brightly, insistent, unyielding. "I know. We're in this together." I took a breath that seemed to buoy our spirits. Whatever played out next was our choice to reclaim. Ahead, the looming silhouette of the warehouse beckoned with the promise of transformation, of finally coming face to face with the past. We would emerge not just by surviving but by conquering the shadows for good. And in that moment I realized that redemption wasn't merely a destination. It was an emotional and psychological journey we would embark on together, towards the light we hadn't dared to hope for. For the first time, hope flickered like a fragile light in the darkness of all that had come before. "I won't let this define us," I promised softly, squeezing her hand tight as we approached the warehouse. "We will make it out of this." And just as the walls of our former lives threatened to bow down on us, I felt the unshakable resolve course through me like electricity. Together we would rewrite our fate as we stepped forward to unveil the next chapter. I couldn't help but smile, knowing that within this fight lay the heart of something undeniable, the promise of tomorrow, no matter how uncertain. And in a world still draped in shadows, I finally understood. It is not by merely facing our past that we find peace, but by boldly walking toward the light of what is yet to come, hand in hand, hearts intertwined, because love, after all, is the ultimate key, capable of unlocking even the darkest nightmares, revealing the truth we had been so desperately seeking. As I tightened my grip on Sophie's hand, the truth resonated within. This was our time to rise, our time to rewrite our story. Together. Always together.